Sounds good.
Are we in or are we entering?
Yes, we're here. Welcome, everybody.
Yes.
I hope you're all doing well. It's great to see all your faces. Um, yeah. So today we'll do a very new thing that we haven't done before, like usual. Change it up. It's going to be about lines. So take it away, Kenny.
Oh, okay. So we have done some courses already. We did an effortless mastery course, which really should put people's minds in the right flow to support their efforts to play. Then we started to turn our attention to how can I practice in a way that I would stay out of the way and the practice would just grow over time. There's no place where this is more relevant than the acquiring of lines. Now, just to clarify what that is, someone, I don't know if Catherine's here, but someone had just emailed me before, texted me before. Oh, I see you, Catherine. Hi. texted me right before and said, what are lines? Now, maybe she never heard that term, but a lot of you jazzers know what a line is. A line is a connector between 2 points. And that's what we call playing on changes. It's, and we're calling the course Demystifying Playing on Changes, because many of you have tried to do this for many, many years, and it just never really gets to where you're trying to get to, right? Or it even doesn't get started. There's a lot of mythology around playing lines, like, well, you should just listen a lot and then you'll get it, or transcribe a lot and you'll get it. And yet it doesn't happen. There is I'm hearing somebody maybe go for muting, right? So 1 second, I want to just put myself in the speaker chair. Okay. There's a lot of mythology about lines, but not really. When you go to college, even, it gets very vague how you acquire lines. One might say that they should have acquired lines before they went to college, because college is a rough place with everything else you're learning, to learn to do this thing. There's this one thing. And like I say, some people attach sociology to it. Some people attach, just all kinds of romantic notions of what lines are. But before they are anything that express anything, they are sort of a science, a very simple science. In a 4-4 bar, there are 8 parking spaces. And depending on how you move those parking spaces around, you connect point A to point B. There's also something I'll be teaching in the course, what I call string theory, but it's not nearly as complicated as actual string theory. Let's put it this way. This is what lines do. Here's one point and here's another point. And I'll be having some graphics too once we get into the course. If you have a piece of string and it connects perfectly from one point to the other, okay, that's one scenario. Another scenario, the 2 points are too close together, but the string is the same length. So you have to kind of squiggle around, or maybe go past it and come back, or maybe start in the wrong direction and then come back. In order for the 2 points to touch, you have to waste some string, okay? And then there's a scenario where the points are too far apart. Now the string does not reach it, and you have to cut that string up into a broken line in order for the 2 ends to touch the points. These 3 scenarios, and like I say, we'll get into it in greater detail, and I'll have it documented. The first one is scales, the second one is chromatics or approach notes, and the third one is arpeggios. If you cannot measure, I mean very unmusic, the acquisition of lines as a physical even understanding is all brain. There's no heart to it whatsoever. If you're trying to get inspired practicing lines, you're probably not practicing lines. You're probably playing the same sad lines you've always been playing. And why doesn't it get better? Because there's a certain eye thing that has to be seen between the changes. And then there's communicating that to the hands. Within our 8 weeks, there's no doubt that you will never have the question again, how do I construct lines to, what are lines supposed to be in order for me to play them? What I will leave you with at the end is a manner of study that will take a few years. The reason you've never learned lines is because we don't face how long it takes to be able to play lines. Even if you've had the right instruction on how to create lines, you would never hang in long enough for them to become muscle memory. Excuse me. In a sense, playing lines is more of a skill than an art. Once you can do it, the art is how do you want to play around with it? And what do you want to say? Do you want to express rhythm, or do you want to express humor, or do you want to express a romantic approach? But the lines themselves is just a physical construction. And what people don't understand, they'll just kind of stab at a few lines between each chord. Does that resonate with anybody? And the essential quality of lines is that they always resolve. In a sense, when I'm playing in this bar, it is a pickup to the next bar. So I was just playing All the Things You Are because in the brilliance of that tune, it seems to be something that all students around the world play with. So using that tune, but I can do it with any tune. The first bar, F minor. If I play the scale, then that's exactly how far the 2 points are. Actually, I can give you a different view if this is helpful. So you see, I'm starting on the ninth. I'm just going up the F minor scale. So understanding that what validated that was where I landed up here. Now, what if the place was different? Let's say it was here. I start here and I end up here. Would I do this? No, of course not. I need to use up some other notes like that piece of string that's squiggly. So I might go past it. I still need 2 more notes. A half note above, a half note below. Just by connecting the 2, I come up with a perfect line. And what if it's far apart? I need to cut up that line. Now, when I got there, yes?
Your voice is slightly softer than the piano. The piano is really loud. I don't know where you put your mic.
I moved it towards the piano, so.
Oh yeah, put it for your voice.
Yeah.
Great. Is it original sound on?
Yes.
Great.
So if I have to get to here, I'm going to have to skip some notes. So let's say I go. Let's see how many notes I have left. I'm there 1 note early. Would I do this? Of course not. And now that you're watching me, you know you could be yelling out, it's the B in between those 2 notes. You see? Now let's say I want to get to the next chord is E flat 7, and I'm going to do this. There I used a lot of chromatics, but what gave it shape is that I was always resolving somewhere. So let's say I was going to go. Now I'm not going to go. I got to waste a lot of notes. Let's say I'm going to go to here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All you have to do is measure. So one of the reasons that people never learn lines is they start by trying to play lines in tempo. And you never make the connections. So in the beginning, you have to know. So the first couple of weeks, we want to make sure you know what a good line is. I say play the F minor chord to the B, let's say the B flat minor 7 chord to the E flat 7 chord. So I'm going to use this on the B flat minor, and I'm going to use this on the E7. So let's see what happens if I just do a scale. I could get away with that because I only skipped 1 note, or I could skip a note earlier. And then that sounds more right, doesn't it? Because what you want to learn to do, the first 4 notes is a foray into that scale. So I'm doing an arpeggio. Now I'm going to get to the B on the E flat. That was perfect. The scale was perfect. But if I went past it, and I need 2 more notes to get to the B. That's the purpose of an approach note, to make an approach. Now, the funny thing is there's nothing here that most of you don't know, but you never slowed it down and worked on a small enough amount of it to change the construction first in the mind's eye. I need to be able to feel how this chord, through my line, gravitates to that chord. So the other thing that they did wrong when you went to school is they had you playing whole tunes. So just kind of sloshing through whole tunes, not really doing anything. You can learn more by like 5 different ways of getting from this chord to that chord. And you start to realize the palette is the scale to begin with. And making the connection is where things get determined. Either you need an arpeggio because the connection is further away, or you need chromatics because the connection is too close. And after you get that feeling, if there's 3 ways of playing on changes, I don't care what the changes are. Scale, chromatics, arpeggio. There is nothing else. So even if I do it, now when I say arpeggios, I don't mean, I mean anything that skips notes. So if I go like this, I can take any kind of approach, but what you have to teach your mind to do is gravitate at first to the resolution of the next bar. Because when you don't do that, you either play through it or you can't find the connections. You know you play a little bit of lines, but until they connect, you don't play lines. This is lines connecting, okay? Then when you displace and do some rhythms, we want to get to the point where that we've never gotten before, where we can just play lines through the changes. But when it's been taught, they skip several essential levels that actually allows you to get used to the dynamic. I don't know, is this physics? To me, it's like those little games where you move the squares around. If I want to get to here, and I'm going to go F minor, I need 1 chromatic. What if I do an arpeggio? I'm not going to play this. I'm not going to do this. I need, was it 3 other notes? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 other notes before I land on that C. So here's my first notes. I could go 2 below and then 2 above. Oh, what was it? The C I was going to, sorry. So, as long as I know where I'm going, at first you might be a little clumsy, but very quickly, because it's like a very simple science, you're going to see how to elegantly connect the points. At first, you have to do it in the most academic way. Because people skip the academics and they want to go right to something functional, they are doomed to slosh through changes, as Bill Evans called it, what did he say? Approximately. There's a great video that you can watch on this. It's not just on this, but Bill Evans on the creative process. And he points out that people that don't have the patience for the first levels of construction, they just kind of go for the music. They play, his word was approximately, for the rest of their lives. So what we're doing is we're putting in the structure that was never taught. Then we're waiting for that structure to become more and more familiar. So if I don't even know where I'm going to go like this. That's not me anymore, that's my hands. And this is the thing I want to tell you in the beginning. When we did the harmony class, I actually did say to you, your harmony would be changed at the end of that class. And everybody's was. On this, I'm saying, by the end of our class, you'll have done a study of the anatomy of lines that you never did before. You'll be quite certain of how to do it. And then we'll talk about, here's where effortless mastery comes in. Can you practice it without expectations? For years. So I won't pretend that someone can play lines in 8 weeks. But what they can do is find out what the construction is and then take whatever time it takes, which usually is years. But if you don't have an ego about it, why wouldn't you spend 10 or 15 minutes a day connecting 2 or 4 bars to be able to go, by the time you can do that, you can call some slow tempos and probably play on lines already. But until you can do it, you need to structure the mind to see where the resolution points are. It's all about resolution points. So if I go, it's great fun, but it's going to take a while before your hands do it on whatever instrument. Your hands do it without you thinking. If you know, those of you who've studied with me already know that there's a certain mindset from effortless mastery where you can just practice forever because you're not disappointing yourself. If you're going to be disappointed by the time it takes, that's why you're where you're at now. People don't like to face the idea that it could take a few years for lines to become muscle memory. But you know, that's as opposed to never, which most of you are old enough already to realize. That is the result. Without putting this structure firmly in your mind and giving your hands on whatever instrument, because I see Libby there too, until the hands get used to making sense from one chord to another. And at least for the rest of your life, you know you have the key and you know that you have the ability to patiently upgrade incrementally and enjoy the little bit of progress that way. But it's not that kind of progress versus great progress. It's that kind of progress versus no progress. You keep going at lines from a real-time perspective or trying to play the whole tune, and the lines never get better. So that's why I call this demystified. There's an absolute simple science to it, or physiology, and it has to do with where the line is going. It's not so much, you know, if I go like this. You have to wait for that to make sense to you. And then adding quite a bit of time before you notice that your hands are playing it ahead of you. You see these people playing on changes, you know. You cannot construct lines when you play one of those tunes, you know, it's like. What tune is that?
What is this thing called love?
You know, that plays itself. You may never get there. The question is, would you like to start going as far as you'll be able to go? Would you like to start making sense when you're playing lines? And would you like to know for the rest of your life what you have to do so there's no mystery? Because if it's not getting better, it's because you lost your patience for doing it. But at least now you know what to do. People walk into walls trying to figure out this mysterious thing of playing lines through changes. So one of the first things we'll really focus on is 2-5-1, because most of the standards is like 70% of it's 2-5-1, you know. Just from the description I gave you, don't you already understand that a little better than you did? It's using up notes to surround or to leap at the next resolution. So, arpeggio, because I want to get down here. Scale. Chromatic. From here, let's go scale, chromatic, to this resolution, arpeggio, surrounding the D. It's such a beautiful, elegant thing, but it takes, especially if you didn't grow up in a society, you know, with your parents playing that music. Some people show up very early playing like that. Either it's talent from another lifetime, or they grew up in a very musical family where that was not unusual. You heard it when you were young. Unfortunately, we heard Christmas carols, so we almost have to start from scratch with everything, rhythm, harmony, and melody. You know, you grew up listening to Christmas carols, man, there's a lot of stuff to catch up to. But there are, you know, skipping the construction part gives you zero chance of ever playing them. You can play a little bit like it, and then you lose it, and then you know, that kind of balancing act, except nobody balances there. First, this whole 8 weeks will be you understanding perfectly how to connect lines on any changes. And then the last couple of weeks will be encouragement to practice it forever without expectations. And what will happen from that? You'll notice incrementally it's coming to you easier. The more times the mind visits an idea, the more familiar with the idea it gets. And if you don't get on that train, it will never be anything except what it is now.
Can we do a few questions, Kenny?
Yeah, I think that. Let me just show you one other thing. It doesn't have to be 2-5-1. I'll play some very strange changes, but using the same idea, it will become just as playable. So there's a bridge, there's a tune of one of my favorite tunes is Bill Evans' Time Remembered, if you know it or not. But the bridge is very strange. Now there is 4 Dorian chords that are tritones away. That means every scale is completely different than the previous one. So here's the E flat minor, A minor, C minor, F sharp. If you can even do that, can you see how you're on the precipice of being able to play lines? So now using this same linear structure, if I go arpeggio, scale, scale. See, if I just play the scales, it sounds like this. Reasonable enough, but it doesn't sound like blowing. If I just play the scales and change the scale and plug into the closest note of the next scale, you're going to say that sounds more like blowing on changes. So let's see. Just by being able to plug into the closest note, you're already now beginning to develop the eye for what perfect lines are. And they're always perfect. The reason they're perfect is because they gravitate towards the resolution point. And you make adjustments to make that resolution point. And after a while, I don't know how long, you make them intuitively. I need a chromatic to land on this note. Or I need 2 chromatics. Or I need 4 notes to surround it before I hit it. Then after that happens, should that happen to you, you can decide to move it around the bar and resolve it on 3. The whole world opens up. But the construction must be fully understood and played on your instrument. As slow as you need to play it, you know, you could just record the chords and then play it over it until you see, wow, I'm making sense even though I have no idea what I'm doing yet. But next year, you'll have a much better idea of what you're doing. So I want everybody to know from right now that unlike the I think people who took the harmony class will tell you they are doing harmony differently now. Like 95% of the class. Because harmony is stagnant. I could see it changing within a matter of months. Lines is the hardest thing in music to do. To improvise cohesive lines through complex changes. And you can write it. You will know what it is. And all kinds of permutations in 8 weeks. But then you will slowly imbibe it. Everything is the body. If the body doesn't play it, it doesn't matter what the mind knows. So I need to do this, you know. That took as long as it takes. It takes as long as it takes. However, the rationale is that incremental improvement towards blowing naturally is much more satisfying than this thing, the loop you've been in your head. I got to get this together sometime. You can make a little attempt. It doesn't work. 6 years go by. You know, this is controlled at first by for the first mistake in schools, if you're teaching people to play changes, then please don't, if you're a teacher, don't put it in time. So I'm going to play on giant steps. Okay, everybody know, some people know giant steps. That's supposed to be very complicated. 2 unrelated chords every bar. So watch. If you're going to go, forget it. But if you're going to go, okay, where's that go? Where's that go? I'm right near this. Arpeggio. Arpeggio. Chromatic. Arpeggio. Chromatic. If you can do it out of time, then it won't be but another year or 2 before you can do it in time. Maybe it'll be a year. I guess I don't want to build up expectations. But as you know, if you studied effortless mastery with me, you can study something forever because from the space, you're not looking for the progress. You're just looking to do the work. And those kind of gems come out just teaching. I cannot teach you anything without teaching you effortless mastery simultaneously, because some things take some mastery over the ego to stay with. You know? You can talk yourself out of it way before you get anywhere. Or you can drop the metrics and just do it for the rest of your life. Lest you think that it takes too much of your time, I personally have made big changes in my playing with 10 to 20 minutes of practice. It just depends if that practice is in sharp focus as to what it's trying to achieve. If you want to sit there an hour, I'd rather you sit there 20 minutes and be totally keyed in on how this chord moves through the line to that chord than to go back into a more familiar space of just trying to flop through changes. But structured practicing, if you did 20 minutes a day now, I would say everybody that's here, their playing life would be changed somewhere over the next 10 years. Unavoidably. If it stopped, you stopped. Which we do all the time. You know, that's the effortless mastery part. The thing that makes you stop is being too focused on the goal. And for that, many of you have heard my example of brushing your teeth. You don't brush your teeth with a goal. You don't think, wow, this is really getting somewhere, and eventually I'll have the whitest teeth, you know, it's going to just be a killer, you know. No. No matter how well you brush them today, you expect to brush them in the morning. What if you felt that way about constructing a line over 2 to 4 bars? And then you move on with your day. Not even any desire for it to go anywhere. You could not help becoming familiar with lines. So again, this thing is more of a mind over matter. Because with a mind that stays centered in what you're doing, you can practice it forever. And the gifts and the results are guaranteed. To what level, we don't know. But from the space, we don't ask that question. Go ahead, Viv.
Craig is asking, can you talk more about the place where you're going? What's that target note? Is that a root or of the next chord, or is that not necessary?
No, I know people do a 7 and third thing. I've never done it, so I wouldn't comment on it. What I do is I want to develop an intuition for connecting to the next note that's part of the next chord. So let's say I want to go, I'm on E flat minor, and I want to go to the 11 of C minor rather. I'm going to go to the 11 of E flat minor. So I'm not going to do this. Oh, it happens to be just right. That was the 11. I'm going to have to skip some notes if I want that to sound good. So, and that was an incredible line because it started from a place and it compensated until it reached a note. So it's not about the third and seventh. I would say you should be fairly certain and comfortable with the scales that go with these chords, because you're going to sort of lock into them from a half step away generally, or a step away. Occasionally you'll leap to them, but you have to know where you're going in order to tighten that lineup. If I just go, this is the way people play changes. But if I know, I can go. So you understand, it doesn't really matter what note you resolve to, but you are learning that whatever you're doing is approaching a note that is part of the next chord, part of the next scale.
Great. I have another question. How does a practice routine for this look? Trey is asking. Are you working from going to 1 to 1, or then from 1 to 3 or 3 to 7?
The
Between
first
those.
thing is taking one chord and being able to reasonably linearize it to the resolution of a second chord and be able to do that different ways. You'll learn much more if you do that. Let's say I'm going to go, right? Look, I went too far, but I came back around. But let's try it another way. Just scale. Now I'm going to need a pretty good pagio because I'm far away from it. Or now I'll just change the coordinates. We'll say G for the C minor and C for the E flat minor. So I'm not going to do this. No, watch. I needed to waste 4 notes chromatically above it so that I would land where I want to land. That takes measuring until it doesn't. After a while, you sense you don't have to. In the beginning, you do choose your coordinates. After a while, you'll pick up any train that's near you and say, oh, I can't get on that one, I'll grab on that one. You know, so I might go, you know. And learning how to do that several different ways is more powerful than doing a line through a whole one whole chorus, one line. You don't really learn this sense of connectivity. And you can pick any 2 chords. But you want to go slow enough so you don't think of yourself as performing. You think of yourself as measuring. And that is so atonal when it comes to creativity that nobody parks you there. But you know what? When we park there, then we start to sense the magnetic pull of one chord from another. It could be any kind of pattern, but right before you get to that chord, you want to have a sense of morphing into the next chord. And many of you will have to do that almost on paper for a while, and then sit there and try to reason it out. Eventually, so practicing would look like this. I'll give you 2 chords, and I'd say pick different. After I've done the first class, you'll pick different coordinates, and using this linear theory, whatever it takes for the 2 end tips to touch, you'll come up with different ways of doing it. And then you'll start to see how lines connect. Then we'll probably expand it. I don't think we'll ever do more than 4 chords, because the way you're going to learn is by variations on how you get through a smaller amount of chords. The longer the piece is, the less variations you'll do, the less you're learning about how lines connect.
I have another question. Those of us that are complete beginners at this, can we talk about the choice of scales?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what complete beginner is. If you are not familiar with jazz chords, this is not probably for you. If you're not familiar with the scales that go on those chords, it's probably not for you because you're too busy trying to even find that out while we're already, it's a given that you know what a Dorian scale is, you know. That you know. Now, I will spend some time with all of you on the altered scale because that's something that many people never learn how to harness it. It's like a wild horse that has to be trained to be the 5 chord that goes to the 1. So if I play Autumn Leaves like this, I'm playing the G minor scale through all of it, which is fine, but it's got a neon sign, amateur. If I just insert the altered scale, it sounds like a professional. So we will spend some time playing with the altar. There's a few versions of the altar scale, and again, whatever anybody else calls them, I don't care. We use them in a way so that they make their connections. So if I go, and at first you have to really measure out carefully. So if you are still learning about 7th chords, and if all the modes are strange to you, basically in 251 it's the Dorian, it's the altered scale, and then it's the major or minor scale. But yeah, if you're really, really beginner, I don't think it's for you. I think the people it's most ripe for are ones that have been trying to play lines for many years and just never found the hook.
I have another question. Do you think writing down these lines and these connection points and the notes between will help you get the lines better?
At first, yes. I wouldn't want to trust your hands because then you get the confusion of your mind. If you write 4 notes down and you know, all right, I'm going to do this, and you know you want to go to here, the flat 9 of the 5 chord. Okay, if you did this, you have 4 more notes to get up there. You know it's not going to be chromatics. Wait a minute, let me change the, just so you can see the spatial thing of it. Okay, I'm here. And I need 4 more notes to get here. I'm not going to go, right? I'm not going to do chromatics. I need, if I did this with the first 4 notes, I'm going to need an arpeggio. So that happened to be a great line. You will stumble on many great lines because now you are making sure at least the second half of the bar heads towards that resolution. That's what formed that line. Listen. If I didn't know I was trying to get here, then I wouldn't have had any shape to where I was going to. So I can do it like that and that quickly. I would say if you get confused at all, it can't hurt to go one step back and really write them out. If you really write them out, then it proves you know how they work. First, you have to know how they work. Then you have to put your feet in that dance pattern over and over again until you start to see them coming. And nobody knows how long that'll take. But it's assured that you'll get better and better at it. If you practice, the zen of practicing means practicing without needing to reach the destination. It's the quality of the practice itself that satisfies. And that takes a certain mindset. That is actually effortless mastery. But if you couldn't write the line, if the line you wrote down was awkward, what is the chance of going any further than that? So absolutely, writing it down can be a very good way to be anchored in. There's a physical reality here that always works. Let's say I want to go here. I want to end on this, the sharp 9. What am I going to do? If I did this, I know I need 4 more notes. I probably have to go up. Now that was a great line, but not because you hear it, but because you were obliged to practice finding that resolution. So at first, you're going to find stuff that surprises you because it's so surprisingly functional, and then you're going to start to hear it. And you start to hear. Familiarity happens when you repeat an action and you just keep repeating it. If you repeat an action and you keep asking yourself how you're doing, you probably won't repeat it enough to become familiar with it. But if you don't ask that question, in spite of everything you believe about your talent or don't believe about your talent, familiarity will set in. Let's say if I don't do this. Let's say I'll go like this. If I want to get to there. Now you might have done it awkwardly, but then you would change it. So even if I do, I want to be chromatic here. Or almost chromatic here. That's all right. So now I have 4 notes to get to that C. Once you start to sense that, you can write line after line. And then you could start by playing your lines. But the reason it never sets in is because if they give you a transcription and you learn the whole transcription, nothing applies to your playing. If you take 2 bars and say, wow, that really kind of moves around, interesting, and you really get it in your hands, you start to feel the logic of it physically and mentally. Not only that, but then you might do things with it. What happens? I'll do the same thing in another key. Wow, now I'm lost. The ability to practice and be present will be required to learn almost anything that you haven't been able to learn up to this time. It's not a talent issue. It's really a mind and a kind of a humility issue. Meaning, not the kind of humility where, the kind of humility where you are content with what you're working on. You're not always bugging yourself where you want to go.
Another question I have was actually 2 questions. One from Jim. Why does blowing lines always have to be considered a constant succession of 8 notes? Can it be more rhythmic or dynamic and unpredictable? And that was another question.
Absolutely. Well, okay. Is there another one that goes with that?
Yeah, it's sort of similar.
That's kind of a juicy one to answer.
Can you talk about phrasing and accents when improvising?
Yeah, but
lines?
what do you phrase? Do you know what phrasing comes after you know what notes are to be phrased? Rhythm comes, what notes are you going to use? Yeah, you could go like, which by the way, I liked. So if you are raw, if you just believe in yourself, I'll probably come listen to you. However, what happens is, you establish the language, which is pure logic, right? And then you leave out notes. So if I go, so you see it's there, but I'm not always playing it. But there has to be a there for you not to play. So of course, as you get more and more familiar, or what I like to do is displacing. I spent about 10 years taking phrases that I understood, and then when I moved them over, I didn't understand them. Before I knew it, I realized I had a style all of my own. This is what I used to do. I don't really do it anymore, but let's get well, I don't have the metronome. expansion of it comes with the familiarity. But that's another way we sabotage ourselves. You're trying to expand something before you've established something. There has to be an it to do a variation of. And because of ego, people go right for the variation, but they don't know what they're varying. So that's the humility right there. The humility to absolutely know what the skill of linear construction is, and then you get comfortable, more and more comfortable with that, and you can just leave notes out. Or you can move notes over. Here's a phrase. Right? If I start on B2, that's fun. But what was the it that you moved? There has to be an it. And the reason you could go through anywhere from a third to a half to 2/3 to 4/5 of a life and you still can't play lines, it's because you never got in on the ground floor to see how they're constructed.
Great. I think I'd love to share something more about the course because you've been touching it. So yes, we're starting a course where you can ask endless questions about this, and it's gonna start in 2 weeks on Thursdays, and will be a total of 8 weeks of group session like this, all recorded. Yeah. And we have a site, so you can read everything about it. And if you have still more questions, then we can answer. We'll try to answer more of them right now in the next few minutes. But then we also have the opportunity to have a phone call with Kenny if you have specific questions. You know, is this for me? Or most of them are answered on the page. We try to just put as much information as we could on that website. So I'll share it in the chat right now.
I'd like to answer Paul Ward's question. He said, how do people like Chick Corea or Michael Brecker, who deliberately play dense, continuous passages to create tension, fit into this approach? Well, Chick Corea doesn't play dense he plays very eighth notey. But he's so sure of what those notes are that he can move them around, and he can totally describe the chords he's playing on. With Michael Brecker, you're talking about a concept that started with John Coltrane, where you could play quantum of notes. But the reason it always works, it's sort of like in the, I think we're going to see this in the Olympics pretty soon. This is very much like ice skating. They do the triple, and then they land. That's what Coltrane soul saxophone players do. So they can go like, you know. It doesn't really, in those kind of things, but you see, they have in their memory system, in their memory banks, effortlessly, they know what the palette is they're playing on. Even if they play out of the chord, they play out of the chord with an intelligence that someone that can't play on chords doesn't play with. So I could do this. So I get. At the end, that justified everything that happened before it. So, of course, they didn't study this. They came up, who knows how they came up. The question is, there are people that come up unquestionably being able to do this. Maybe they were in a musical family, or they just played all the time, or they just listened all the time. What are you going to do now? Are you going to divorce yourself from your life and just listen to the records all the time and see if you can copy them? I think that could work. But now we need an intellectual construct in order to work off of and become increasingly familiar with. I did this work myself on different things, and then in different time signatures. You know, because if it's a 4/4 bar, it's 8 notes. If it's a 7/4 bar, it's 7 notes. You know. matter. There has to be some there. And then I don't know how far you're going to get, but you'll have the right information, and I'll try to make it very clear to you towards the end that the rest of it's going to be up to the consistency of practicing, taking in that sort of how lines gravitate to the next bar, and keep doing it until you find that it's a feeling. How far will you get? Most of us, if you haven't gotten to Chick Corea or Michael Brecker yet, well, congratulations. That's the rest of the earth hasn't either. The question is, if you have a steady practice that's based on the right information, how much will you improve? Which right now, without something to get you in there, and most of you know this already. You've tried. It's very haphazard. This mystery, how to play lines. That's why I called it like kind of demystifying. It starts with a construct that you want to get very comfortable with.
I have another question. How is this different from the My Music Masterclass videos that you've and other things you've done in the past?
It isn't. It is the My Music Master. I mean, I think it's all there. What the benefit of these classes that we've been doing is that suddenly for 8 weeks, you are taking it serious enough to give attention to a part of your playing that you could look at those videos and then you have trouble. Oh, I don't know if I don't know. So much to look at. On your own, this is again where ego comes in and effortless mastery is relevant. There's so many things we want to learn. How much time?
And you'll be with Kenny in a room, being able to ask him questions instead
Well,
of
not just that, but for 8 weeks, you're going to have
stay with it.
Consistently focusing on that subject, which I believe after that time, you'll have pushed past certain points that wouldn't have happened if you were doing it on your own. It's the same concept as Weight Watchers. I don't have a book about this. I see somebody.
Right.
I meant to do a theory book many years ago. I never got to finish it. Perhaps I'll do it at some point. The benefit is that I'll be working with you for 8 weeks. You will push through because you won't want to waste your time. You won't want to waste your money.
Gabriel is asking, what will the course be like? Will it be composing or playing lines in class and getting feedback?
At first, it'll be me demonstrating many ways to get through lines. Then you will go home and work on it for a minimal amount of time yourself, maybe changing the key. You have to learn how to work on things in very small packages. That's how you get more out of them. So you'll do that. We'll have people show the results of their work. It's really good when I look at one of your lines because if it needs a correction, then everybody benefits. So I'll be correcting people's lines, and once or twice during the time, we'll ask you to send in short examples, which I'll try to respond to. And in other words, for 8 weeks, you're going to take 8 weeks to get it right. Then at least you know what to practice, to take it from that understanding into muscle memory.
For those who were wondering, we'll send the video of this session today. We'll send it to everybody, so you don't have to you can always get back to it.
Well, also, every class will be videoed. To me, one of the greatest benefits of the course is that whatever happened during that time, only the people in this class will get that video to review something they did, to review something someone else did, and you went, oh, yeah. I want to look at that again.
Can you go into repetition and motifs in line creation?
Is that a question from somebody?
Paul, yeah.
Motifs is something I'll talk about if asked. It's not really the connecting thing, but it's still an intelligent use of the scale from each chord. So no, I don't think that'll be a feature, but it's certainly something. A lot of stuff happens during the course that I'm not aware is going to happen. It's my intention to get you seaworthy as a person that can play through changes. And if that subject comes up, it's as simple as this. If this is my motif, but that means having a very quick understanding of what the next chord is and just replicating that pattern. You develop things in your practicing, and then you wait for them to manifest in your playing. and you don't expect anything. In other words, your job is to practice things in a very intelligent way. Your job is not to well, there's a saying that some of you have heard me say. Your job is to access your process. Your job is not to assess your progress, because that only makes you feel discouraged, because it never happens in the time that the ego wants it to happen. So if you don't consider it your job to assess how you're doing, but it's your job to make sure that the process you found, that you're doing it, the results will come incrementally.
When you play outside the changes, are you thinking about where you're going to resolve the tension beforehand?
Yeah, but people that don't know how to play the changes never really play that intelligently outside the changes. Because in learning to play on the changes is good construction. So let's say I go, let's go to the overhead cam here. See, that was good lines, but they happen to be in the wrong key. Which is playing out. I don't see, some people make a real science out of playing out, but I'll tell you, if you can play good lines, just play them in another key, you'll be playing outside the changes. But why does it sound slick? Because I know how to resolve. So like if I go, you hear those little resolutions, they happen just enough to make you realize that we are on the changes. So playing off the changes is very easy. Finding the resolution points is what makes them sound valid. So that's one of the key things we're learning by learning to play on the changes. So if you find this, you could just as well do. The trick is really, it's like that triple double they do, or double triple, whatever it is. It's how you land. And that's one of the key practices of this. Moving 8 notes, if we're in 4/4, and I think that's a good place to start. If we're in 4/4, we're moving 8 notes that move inexorably towards a resolution that feels like nature itself. It plays itself once you understand it. It says how do Coltrane changes differ in terms of practicing to regular functional harmony? Well, which Coltrane are we talking about? The most evolved Coltrane in terms of changes was the period of giant steps. Not just giant steps, but how he used those chords to reharmonize other tunes. But after that, his music took a spiritual turn. That meant quantum of notes over one change. So, his music graduated to that, and I will tell you that people that can't play on changes often do just go to that. And you know what? They have a good time. And you can. But there's no changes there. When you hear giant steps, you hear this. I don't know his solo exactly, but. near perfect construction. What was amazing is that at that session, he lays that tune on Tommy Flanagan. That is like the ultimate, and Tommy played pretty good. See, you can hear Tommy struggling. The reason he's struggling is because all bebop was about playing into the resolutions. These resolutions were too surprising. They were coming too fast. And to Tommy's credit, he almost can catch up with it. But that's why he doesn't sound like Tommy Flanagan. He's just hoping he can just stay up on the changes. When you're not ahead of the changes, you're usually behind them. Herbie Hancock once said in an interview, playing outside is easy. The hardest part is getting back in. Well explained, Kenny. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Actually, it's not hard, but you have to practice resolution. I've been to many universities and seen them try to teach the inexact lesson of how to play lines. And it's very inexact. I've never heard anybody mention the resolutions. That's what tightens the string. I can go, if I know I'm going to, saxophone players, just all Train did was he expanded the quantum of notes, but it still was, they go, that low note is the resolution. And they all do it, but Train was the first. You know, what I'm saying here is that we'll spend 8 weeks doing it. That's what's different than doing it any other way. I have a very good explanation of all this on my music. What's it called? My music club. My
Music Masterclass.
Music Masterclass. Everything is there. In fact, you know, I think we're just saying this off the top of my head, but I will put that out to everybody that takes the class. Because the way to move on is to not quit. And the 8 weeks is going to be a hell of a running start. Just like it was with the harmony. I've shown that harmony stuff many times, and I've never seen anybody come back and do it. That's because they thought it was really cool for a week or two, and then they got caught up on something else. So the idea that we do something over a period of time is what drives the point home. Anybody else?
Somebody about modal vamps.
Modal, say that again?
Modal vamp. How do you
Vamp.
approach playing on a modal?
Well, because the chords don't change. So, and we'll cover that a little bit. Basically, you find that's a little more African in this sense. You find patterns that have rhythm. Or but the arc and shape of things are the same. But they become more like 4-note patterns that connect. Anybody that plays them as long lines, it's like a clothesline that really sags. A long line is really a pearl necklace of 4-note lines. That's what you hear when McCoy Tyner plays it. That's what you hear when anybody in the modal world plays, you know, like. That's where playing outside the changes really came from, because as soon as they were playing long modal things on one chord, naturally they started to treat it as a pedal and started to play the same stuff outside. So let me slow it down for you. See what happened? It was sliding back in. So once you find a modal pattern, just play it in different keys. Listen to Love Supreme, because on the original Love Supreme, before he gets to this, he goes like. course moves around, and in a way, he is signaling the start of a new era where people take motifs and play them anywhere in the 12-note universe. So, you know, let me put myself on and yes, we'll definitely spend some time talking about that. I mean, this is a pentatonic scale. So what if I played in E flat? But the song is still, let's say, in D minor. It's actually easier to get back in because there are a bunch of rhythmic 4-note things. Again, you need to know how they function, and that's what most of the course is about. Really getting the best construction, and then some coaching on how to turn that into muscle memory.
Will you
Turning
talk
something into
about
muscle memory takes as long as it takes, but you'll see incremental change all the way through.
Jim is asking, will you talk about spontaneous reharmonization to create lines?
I will. That's like combining the other chorus. But yeah, I mean, towards the end, I'll put some very random progression. It doesn't matter. I'll tell you what. Yes, we will. But towards the end, I want to make sure the construction is right. Then we'll get to more and more exotic changes, and you'll realize that doesn't matter. The construction is the same. So I'll tell you what. Oh, let's take 4 random chords. A flat 7 sus. Oh, I should write this down. All right. Let's try to make them as unrelated as possible, which is difficult because there is nothing unrelated. And random harmony and lines is where you realize it. A flat 7 sus. Oh, E minor 7. B major 7 sharp 5. F minor Aeolian, which, you know, we did all that talking about in the harmony class, right? So these are the chords. And by the way, they're going to sound great, even though they had no effort to put them together. Okay, that's another subject. That was the other chorus, but here we go. Using the same stuff, it connects really, the issue isn't the chords. The issue is whether or not you have imbibed construction and magnetic pull towards a resolution. Because then the chords are irrelevant. You know, I could do that again, start somewhere else. Am I still down there? That's what I want you to be able to do. I want you to be able to write any variation of that, play out of time any variation of that, and then if you'll give yourself the zen of practicing, it will become more and more something you can do in different situations. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Actually, when you're out there trying it, if you're not thinking about it, you'll find your lines are changing anyway. The practicing, those of you who studied me before, we practice things on a much deeper level. We're not practicing things and then trying to bring it into our playing. That's a sucker's game. If it was done, we wouldn't have to bring it into our playing. Right? Well, let me get back to the other angle. If you had, I could get into a whole nother thing here which relates a little more to effortless mastery, but if you've practiced something and then you play and it's not there, that just means you haven't practiced it enough yet. Because if you really knew it, it would show up with all the other stuff you know. If I said blow on a C major scale, probably everybody here could do it. Now, depending on your instrument, if I said do it on C sharp, you might not be able to do it as well. But we don't have a tolerance for what we don't know. When we don't know something, we think the deficiency is us. And that's why people try to escape discomfort by not really practicing anything. Or they get into it for a little while and it doesn't connect in the unrealistic time they decide, and they stop. Hopefully we're dispelling that by having no timetable, but starting with the right information. And then watching how it moves. Isn't it interesting? If you go ahead and say, when am I going to be doing this on stage with like Joe Henderson, well, who's passed away, but well, that's going to ruin it. You have to, well, you don't have to do anything. But if you learn the self-fulfillment of being present and practicing something that is language and allowing it in, and you can understand that that is a fulfilling life, you of course will be somewhere different in 5 years than if you start practicing it. Think about how great other people are. I'll never be there. You'll take, and then you give up. That's the only reason something in your playing has had happened yet. You gave up before it got there because it takes much longer than you think. And we just want results. And why do we want results? Because the better we play, the better we feel about ourselves. So you see, I'm spiraling it all the way back to the premise of effortless mastery. Never have any relationship between your value as a person and something as insignificant as how you play an instrument. And that way you can practice it with a lot more clarity, like you practice a hobby. My hobby is getting lines to come out of my hands or getting lines to come through my horn one at a time and really feel where it's going and not get ahead of myself. After a while, I'm moving faster. That's why the hands are moving faster. Familiarity is guaranteed if you will repeat something without embellishing it. But everybody embellishes it because they start to attach more meaning to it. As soon as you attach more meaning to it, it's harder to do. See, now we're getting into effortless mastery. But it's almost, I can't give you this if there isn't a degree of that in there so that you know, okay, I'm going to practice letting my hands be led to the resolutions, and I'm not thinking what that's leading to. I'm enjoying doing that. And then it will lead to something. But if I keep bugging myself with, what's this leading to? What's this leading to? I'll probably lose my patience for what I'm doing. And that's how we sabotage ourselves. Plain and simple. Hi, Maria. Nice to see you.
Those that sign up early, we do have like early bird bonuses because they tell us that we should do that. And everybody that signs up for February 8th will get Kenny's new book signed in their mailbox. Oh yeah, I'll share the link again. Yeah, so let me know if you have any questions. You can always email us, and you can sign up for a phone call with Kenny through that same website if you're
we
not
do
sure.
phone call just to see, do you really feel this is right for you? I don't want you to be there. And my course is never meant for you to have another reason to think of yourself as deficient. If you're not ready to be in it, then we don't want you to be there because we want you to work on what you are ready to work on. You can do it, but you have to find out where you come in on the process. Because of an ego, everybody tries to come in on a higher plane than they're ready to. And that's why failure to change the architecture of your playing is the norm, not the exception. Ego kills the practicing that needs to be done to change the architecture you're playing. So by definition, you have to not need to change your playing. And then do it. Isn't that better than needing to change your playing, but you're not doing anything to change your playing? I mean, the sabotage of the mind is stunning. And I think we're all pretty familiar with it at this point. So what I would like is incremental growth with the right information, so I'm never confused again. And I will see growth because I didn't stop. When I decided I need to work on rhythm, and I decided in 81, because I heard myself record something. I say, shit, it's fancy, but it doesn't have any rhythm. So I started working on rhythm, which will be a course at some point. The whole idea, yes, these exercises, harmony, melody, rhythm, are the best. I found the simplest, most obvious way to improve in all those ways. But if you don't master the mind enough to stay with it, that's exactly why it doesn't happen. And that's so obvious that it's almost idiotic to say.
Want to play a song and end it there?
I guess so. I guess it should have changes, but now after all that bop, I feel like playing a ballad. Does anybody mind? But you'll still
I
hear the
think that's
lines.
great.
You'll still hear the lines because you see me speaking now. Everything that I'm doing, my mouth is doing the right thing. I cannot take responsibility for what's coming out. I'm beyond that now, so I could get in trouble any second here. But the words are formed, the thoughts are done. This is knowing something. Surrender to a process enough so that your playing starts to feel like other things you know, like using a fork. So I think I'll play what the mind needs to keep going incrementally towards this thing without fear, expectation, or worry. It needs peace. Passing tone. When you play from the space, you really enjoy a rest. Oh man, that's so inspired, right? Chromatic to a target. The space you leave between yourself and the instrument is gold. This is what I got from Train. McCoy Tyner. Elvin Jones singer. Well, now I'm intoxicated. I'm expecting the police to bust down my door any moment. Free drugs from within. Harmony, rhythm, melody. Everything we do together is to get you to the point where the instrument gives you much more than you have to give it. And if you want to do it with sophisticated materials, you have to know those materials. And if you want to know those materials, you have to have self-support while studying them. Otherwise, you'll talk yourself out of it before you get anywhere. Don't quit one day before the miracle happens. Okay. It's so
Thank you,
great
everybody.
to see.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Kenny.
Well, anytime. I tried to get my forums back online when they took my room away, but we found another room. I really want to do those forums again. They were so fun, and how much they gave to people just made me feel great.
We'll do more soon.
We'll figure it out.
Well, I
You
hope
know,
to see you all next in the
yeah.
course in a few
You know,
weeks.
you'll be studying in a
That'd be
group. You'll
awesome.
be studying the absolute right information.
Yeah, seeing all your faces again.
All right, folks. Michael, great to see you. My brother, when I get out there, you and I are going to hug for about 2 hours. I mean, we've had all this love with these postage stamps, right? Can you imagine?
The Zoom.
Yeah. Okay, folks.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Good to see you all.